shit, homie. You know what I'm saying? Them a bullshit with me, man. That's alright. This, man. Oh, fuck, I can use this. Shit here.
Back in 2009, there wasn't much money to be made on the internet, but to go viral truly held its meaning. With life-changing examples such as the Catch Me Outside girl, the Golden Voice, and Antoine Dodson, aka Hide Your Kids, Hide Your Wives, just to name a few. The internet was starting to become this life-changing platform that unsuspecting people were accidentally tapping into very early. Since then, the amount of content on the internet has skyrocketed. The term being viral does not hold the same weight it used to, and censorship has gotten beyond crazy. Out of all the differences though, the internet still has the same love for one main thing: fuckery. I remember being in middle school back in 2009 and seeing hella clips of skaters crashing out, drugs being used, and plenty of fights on YouTube, which would never make it on the platform today. To post something like that on the platform today, you'd have to start the video off with a message that says, "This is only for learning purposes and not to be reused in a negative manner." You know how that goes. But anyway, one of the best instances of debauchery in history to ever come from the internet actually happened on television back in 2006. The television-internet relationship was much different than the way it is now. To be on TV regularly meant that everyone in the world pretty much knew who you were. You had a ton of eyes on you all the time because other than changing the channel, people sitting at home couldn't really do much to get away from you. This didn't change our mentality on love and fuckery though. So shows like Jerry Springer,
I'm a man. You can tell, sweetheart.
No, I can't tell.
You can tell.
I can tell.
You can tell.
I can tell.
You can tell.
Jackass, and Dr.Phil were still insanely popular. That's a stupid random list, I know. The super internet smash I'm talking about today happened on a Dr. Phil show back on December 12, 2006, appropriately titled Hate Crimes Against the Homeless. In this episode, Omega Titan from the internet, BumFights, faces off against one of the biggest figures in television at the time, Dr. Phil. But before I get into what happened on this day, I have to give you the backstory from both sides so you can see the pivotal role both played in internet TV culture. In the late 90s, Ryan McPherson was a teenager, always riding around town with a video camera in the suburb of La Mesa, California, not far from San Diego. Doing this, he met two homeless men named Donnie Brennan and Rufus Hanna. Brennan and Hanna each had spent time in the U.S. Army, with Brennan serving time in the Vietnam War. Both men struggled heavy with alcoholism for years and were recognizable in the area, a quiet place two of them found after being homeless in San Diego. A lot of the homeless population favors the West Coast due to the more livable weather and affluent areas. People in La Mesa, including the police, would let them be, but McPherson's unlikely connection with Brennan and Hanna would propel them all into the limelight and change their lives forever. Back then, McPherson, in his 40s, frequently filmed his friends skateboarding and attempting tricks across La Mesa, like in the then popular CKY videos. McPherson says he heard about the duo, particularly Hanna, and their stunts from a friend. Quoted, "People were coming up to me, telling me there's this homeless guy running his head in the trees," McPherson says. "Felt he should document this." McPherson's early videos were passed around La Mesa and started reaching outside the city, catching the attention of Zach Bubeck, a Las Vegas native and freelance graphic designer living in San Diego at the time. Then, in his early 20s, Bubeck had seen similar tapes of homeless men wilding, high school melees, pranks, and skaters produced in Las Vegas by another teen by the name of Danny Tanner. Amateur filmmaker Mikey Silman was then brought in, who was another friend of Bubeck's, and the four founded a production company called In Decline. They decided to combine the risque footage into an hour-long DVD compilation inspired by the popular MTV series Jackass, but with added shock value. Viewers saw homeless characters risking bodily harm by performing stunts, brawling, abusing drugs, and engaging in all sorts of extreme activities. To optimize visceral consumer reaction to the product, they called it BumFights. The debut release, titled BumFights Volume 1, A Cause for Concern, was produced by Ryan McPherson with friends Zachary Bubeck, Daniel J. Tanner, and Michael Silvan as In Decline Films, featuring primarily high school fights caught on tape and homeless men, most notably Rufus Hanna and Donnie Brennan, in the San Diego, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas metropolitan areas, attempting amateur stunts in a style inspired by Jackass. Unlike the title says, the video does not depict homeless men actually fighting, but actually a compilation of street fights caught on camera and homeless men performing skits and stunts. BumFights was released near the forefront of the reality TV boom in the 2000s, which may have given the video an assist. The wave in the early 2000s saw the growth of the home video, with video cameras starting to become more accessible. Released in the spring of 2002, the first film series would prove quite a profitable commodity, making its way into the cultural loop while branding the filmmakers as manipulative violence mongers. The notorious videos had gained so much popularity that by 2002 there were large volumes of sales and merchandise. In June of 2002, just a couple months after the first DVD's pressing, Wire reported that 250,000 copies of BumFights had been sold for $22 each. According to Silman, the amateur filmmaker, a mention of BumFights on the Howard Stern show led to extensive news coverage across the country and even overseas, leading to the crashing of the server the team used to sell all the DVDs online. Around that time, the 4 original founders sold the business to 2 Las Vegas businessmen who went by the pseudonyms Ty Beeson and Ray Leticia for around $1.5 million. Beeson and Leticia would go on to release the next 3 films. They also included the unused footage that did not make the first film that was acquired in the buy. The video series immediately garnered criticism. The series titles goes as follows: BumFights Volume 1, A Cause for Concern, released in 2002. BumFights Volume 2, Bum Life, released in 2003. BumFights Volume 3, The Felony Footage, released in 2004. BumFights Volume 4, Return of Ruckus, released in 2006. Silman would continue on to say there's not a platform in the world that's going to stand by anything like that and let you monetize it. So in 2002, we would have been out of luck in that respect. The timing was right. There's still a lot of people doing similar things and they're not making any money. Community complaints led to police investigating if any laws were being broken by the producers. By April of 2006, the 4 original filmmakers agreed not to produce any more BumFight videos or distribute any videos already made, and to pay the homeless men depicted in the videos under a settlement announced shortly before a lawsuit was due to go to trial. Though the later films did feature footage acquired from Indecline in their deal to the rights, it was Leticia and Beeson who released the 3 BumFight sequels, stretching out the controversy, like I mentioned before. But the BumFights legacy will continue to follow McPherson, Silman, Tanner, and Bubeck for years, with the names boldly appearing in both headlines and court documents. Also, I forgot to mention, by this point they were already wrapped up in quite a few legal battles. I just pretty much left that out because that was a whole different backstory. Philip Calvin McGraw, better known as Dr. Phil,
Doctor, fill you up.
is an American television personality and author best known for hosting the talk show Dr. Phil. He holds a doctorate in clinical psychology, though he ceased renewing his license to practice psychology in 2006. In 1998, Dr. Phil helped Oprah Winfrey win a big lawsuit. He then became a regular on her show before launching his own highly successful daytime talk show, thus proving that Oprah's powers have no bounds. The Dr. Phil show premiered on September 16, 2002, around the same time that BumFights was really picking up steam. Dr. Oz was another quack doctor who had a great run on TV, who also was originally put on by Oprah. It's been well documented that Dr. Phil came from a troubled home. His father was an alcoholic and could be incredibly abusive. Because of this negative association with alcohol, Dr. Phil claims he hasn't had a drink in over 45 years. The advice he gave out on his show, at least early on, wasn't horrible. That being said, it hardly took any time before he devolved into exploiting the mentally ill. Back in 2006, when this whole thing went down, Dr. Phil was to the top of his game. But come 2023, it's not looking too good for Dr. Phil. The show was canceled this year because CBS insiders were concerned that viewers and advertisers were lumping Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz together, both giving out bad information. The show had become radioactive for many sponsors, according to the sources close to the situation. A decade ago, top corporate brands that backed Dr. Phil included American Express, Allstate, and General Mills. But during an episode aired earlier this year, commercial breaks were full of spots for vitamin supplements, personal injury law firms, and public service announcement on vaccines and quitting smoking, as well as multiple in-house ads for other CBS shows. So now that you know both sides, let's get into the topic of this video. As I said earlier, in 2006, Dr. Phil was one of the biggest shows on television. In fact, just 4 months after this situation that I'm about to talk about, Dr. Phil was ranked 4th overall by the Nielsen Media Research with 6.69 million views on their episodes. With 5 successful seasons, he clearly figured out what worked well for his syndicated talk show until he made a huge mistake and invited our protagonist in this situation. On December 12, 2006, Ty Beeson, producer of BumFight videos, was invited on set to defend his work on the BumFight series. Dr. Phil was expecting a usual cakewalk with his audience there to back him up and SSD in case he ever needed help, but got the surprise of a lifetime when he saw a supposedly easy target walking up on stage and not the way he expected. There's a quote that says sometimes evil destroys evil, and Dr. Phil must have seen the devil walking on stage because he saw Ty Beeson approaching the stage looking like a dollar store doppelganger. Nah, for real, Ty Beeson came out looking just like Dr. Phil, perfectly mimicking his "you just need to let it go already" hairstyle. Dr. Phil knew exactly where this was going and knew he had to bail immediately because Ty Beeson figured out something the other guests who were belittled on the show didn't. Dr. Phil is no better than anyone that walks up on that stage. To simplify the situation, essentially Dr. Phil is just doing the same thing Ty Beeson is doing with BumFights. You see, Dr. Philly up here benefits from exploiting vulnerable people for views and has gained a substantial amount of money from doing so. He acquires people with a serious problem in life, puts them on camera, and exposes their whole situation while giving extreme minimal verbal support, carefully wording himself so he can dodge a lawsuit.
Have you asked me what I've done to overcome this problem? I don't think you asked that question at all.
I have problems with the answers.
And when he saw that shiny bald head walk out, he saw his entire empire crumble like a That's So Raven flashback. I personally think the fact that the producers saw him backstage looking like that and still sent him out is hilarious. You know, somebody called him mean mustache sweeping afterwards. Anyway, after the crowd saw his low light tape, Ty Beeson comes out and absolutely destroys our mustache master by saying,
If you think I exploit people, every time you bring a guest on this show, you exploit them and spread whatever the problems they have to the whole world. You think that's helping them?
Yeah, keep telling yourself that. You can go.
Dr. Phil refused to let Ty Beeson get a word because apparently his actions were too despicable. When he does this, Ty Beeson absolutely drops the bomb about how they aren't so different, Dr. Phil and him, and Dr. Phil is not having it. This is where the mob mentality really comes into play. Dr. Phil is surrounded by his followers who blindly agree with him, and this time was no different. Sure, Ty Beeson is far from a saint and was stumbling over his words, but low-key his message was the truth. And if you look up this video anywhere on the internet, any YouTube video, even on the CBS site, all the comments up under are all on Ty Beeson's side, saying how Dr. Phil should have at least defended his point. After being completely overpowered and against his will being ushered off stage by security, Dr. Phil apologizes to his studio audience and says Mr. Beeson's negative highlight reel was just so negative that he refused to talk to him and refuses to publicize the episode.
Who do you think you are, huh?
Bye.
Hey, bud, come on.
Huh?
Come on.
No, I'm not finished talking to you.
Yeah, you are.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
Come on, let's go.
Dr. Phil then states, there's no way we could have made a serious dialogue about this topic. Rather than give Ty Beeson his time on stage to defend his claims that Dr. Phil's a hypocrite, he threw him off the show under the pretense that he was too despicable to give a platform to. Imagine booking a guest, knowing what he does, then pretending to be disgusted and kicking him off. He acts like he didn't know he was the owner of BumFights ahead of time. The fact that this guy makes Dr. Phil feel disgusted suggests that Dr. Phil doesn't have what it takes to be a psychologist, to me at least. Cause I thought he was supposed to be a professional at dealing with people like that. I mean, bro was totally cool with interviewing a guy who literally murdered his mom by caving her face in with a sledgehammer, but BumFights is where he draws the line. Let's be honest, Dr. Phil just didn't want any attention to how he's basically just an upscale version of Ty Beeson. If Dr. Phil was smart, he would have let Ty Beeson stay on the show and explain his point so that he could defend his claims of Dr. Phil being a vulture. In my opinion, I don't think he would have been able to defend himself accurately though. Because anybody that takes children and publicizes their problems for the whole world for monetary gain, it's not much you can do to spin move out of that. And a common retort that I see online is at least these children can get money from being on the show, but what is it worth when the money runs out and that version of you is cemented on the internet forever? Because all the big things on television back then pretty much made it to the internet. Anyway, I know Dr. Phil definitely sat in silence in his dressing room staring in the mirror after this, but it must not have been too crazy, because against his word, he still came out and publicized the episode. And to make this whole situation even more insane, Brian McPherson and Silman believe it was an associate of Leticia and Beeson's who appeared on the Dr. Phil show posing as the BumFights creator. They don't even think it was the real him. I find this a little hard to believe though, because here he is in another interview years earlier hyping up BumFights in the same way, same voice and everything.
We're documenting life on the streets and we're selling it to the world. Around the world. We're sending things to Istanbul, Turkey, to Tokyo, to all over Europe.
Are you abusing the homeless with this film?
No.
Rufus, the superstar stunt bum. We changed his life.
What do you mean he's a superstar? How do you figure he's a superstar?
He is. Everyone knows him around the world.
Everybody knows him, but he's still homeless and doesn't have any money.
How do you know that?
Why can't you answer how much money you're making on this film?
Because I don't have my CFO with me right now.
Who's your CFO?
Who do you think it is? The financial officer?
As you could tell, that's clearly him. But hey man, that's the story of BumFights versus Dr. Phil. This is my first YouTube video, so if it's a little choppy, just bear with me. You know how that shit go. If you like the video, go outside, enjoy some sunshine. It's free. Or subscribe. That's also free too. I'll catch y'all in the next video.